Parking Garage Rally Circuit, or PGRC for short, is a retro arcade-style rally racing game that takes place in repurposed parking garages from various cities around the United States. And just like most racing games, the track that ended up with the most precise lines and coveted record was 01, a term that usually refers to the first track a player will race in a racing game. In PGRC, this track is named Learning Garage, and its short but sweet history all started on September 20th, the day the game was released. This is the story of Learning Garage Lite. The game currently has a total of 8 tracks as well as 3 cars, each unlocked as you progress through the game, but today I will be focusing on the true first track, the Learning Garage with the light car. Unfortunately, the history of the track has not been officially recorded anywhere, so it's possible I have missed some times, but I've scoured through Discord, Steam, YouTube, and I've even spoken with some of the racers that have set records themselves. With all of that, I've detailed as much of the timeline as possible, and I don't believe I've missed any important times. As the first track in the game, it is a fairly simple track with no currently known shortcut methods. It starts with a down ramp, after which you have to avoid this guardrail and progress into what I call the S-turn. Followed by an on-ramp, leading into a right turn, one straightaway, and finally, a left turn back to the finish line. Simple enough. However, you will have to complete 2 laps to finish the map, and even more if you're driving with the heavy and ultra cars. And with the speed you gain from the first lap, the S-turn becomes the hardest turn on the track by a landslide. You need to manage to fit in 2 drifts and brake just enough during each to get a tight enough line to make it through the small turns without losing too much speed along the way. But that's not all. Due to the speed you've gained, you also have to slow down your car just enough as you go over the on-ramp to prevent your car from lifting off the ground. If you go in full speed, your car will launch off the map. Even if you go in just a bit too fast, your car will lift off the track while you're partway through a drift, and all your speed will be lost in an instant. Once you've made it past that, the rest isn't too difficult. But you can't lose focus yet, as by this point in the track, if you're on world record pace, you likely have so much speed that crashing out is only a matter of slightly hitting a wall or obstacle. Plus, you still need to fit in as many drifts as possible to keep up with the world record pace. On September 20th, the day of the game's full release, right away many of the players quickly found that in order to maximize your speed, you need to implement a system called boost chaining. Boosts are collected by drifting your car for certain periods of time. With each boost, your car's top speed is increased. There are 2 different kinds of drifts, the yellow spark drift and the blue spark drift. The blue drift will cause you to gain more speed than the yellow drift, but it requires a longer drift, so you may be unable to fit one into a turn depending on how big it is and how fast you're driving. The more boosts you can squeeze in, the faster your car's top speed will be. This is crucial as your car's top speed determines your pace. Even if you slow down temporarily, your car will quickly get back up to its top speed without any repercussions. That said, you can lose your drift chain in several ways. You can tell you've lost it because the exhaust pipe won't have any flames coming out of it anymore, and your car will slowly decrease in speed even when you're holding the accelerate input. There are 6 ways to lose your drift chain: starting a drift and releasing it before the yellow sparks appear, slowing down with your brakes too much, waiting too long between drifts, releasing the accelerate input for too long, dropping below the minimum speed to start a drift while you're not currently holding the accelerate input, or if the car spends too long in the out of alignment state. In other words, crashing. There were 2 prominent players that were able to take advantage of this mechanic early on and were dominating the track on day 1. It was a tug-of-war match between Soar and MJ. In order to make the most of this mechanic, they would start off by immediately drifting back and forth to gain speed early into the race. Soar had the advantage as he was in the playtest before the full game released. Because of this extra experience, he was even able to collect every single record in the game at one time, including a 24.216 second run on Learning Garage. However, His focus was so divided between the many tracks, it gave MJ the chance to take him by surprise with a new and interesting technique. MJ decided to implement a new line in the start where he drives through the guardrail, allowing him to get a more direct line in the S-turn of both laps. This allowed him to drive a 24.050 second run, but the route had two big drawbacks. Not only was it easy to crash into the guardrail and lose your speed at the start, but the rail would also end up in a different position each attempt, and frequently it was right in the way going into lap 2, causing many crashes and a very inconsistent route. Due to this, the technique was abandoned by most players, opting for the more consistent strategy of avoiding it altogether. Naturally, Sword took back the first place with a 23.933 second run, but before the day ended, MJ managed to claim it once more. This time, without the guardrail technique, he drove a 23.899 second run and managed to remain in first for the rest of the first day. The record would stay here for the next couple days, but it would be matched by another player by the name of Brando. Worried that Brando would soon pass him, on April 22nd, MJ decided to improve his time and managed to drive a 23.883 second run, an improvement of about 0.016, just 16 thousandths of a second. Because of the way the game records its times, records can only be improved by about 16 thousandths of a second at a time, and all the records will always end in a 0, 3, 6, or 9, meaning that this was the smallest possible improvement he could have made on his previous time. Unfortunately for MJ, it wasn't quite enough, and within 24 hours of MJ's new time, Brando had improved his time to a 23.833 second run, claiming the world record by just 0.05 seconds. Again, however, the record would last less than 24 hours, when a new player, Dot Lake, decided to join in on the battle. He drove a 23.783 second run, another 0.05 second improvement. Dot Lake's record was the first to stand for an extended period of time. Albeit just 4 days, it was still much longer than any record up to this point. But that was when, on September 28th, a titan of PGRC burst onto the scene. It was a driver named Jag Zero. Jag Zero was undoubtedly the best driver at the time, and what I consider to be one of two titans that have consistently dominated most of the world records in the game. While he wasn't able to get a full board of first like Sword did on day 1, he did manage to have the most world records at the time by a landslide. You also have to factor in that it has been several days since the release of the game by this point, so getting a world record on any map is significantly harder than on day 1. He drove a 23.733 second run, yet another 0.05 second improvement, but it wouldn't last long, as another new player named Mr. Green drove a 23.649 second run on the very same day, breaking the 0.05 improvement streak with nearly a full tenth of a second shaved off the world record in one run. This time would again be strong enough to hold back any new improvements for 4 days, but a new player had been grinding behind the scenes since the 24th, and October 2nd, he drove a 23.583 second run, and that player was me. It was another strong run that would hold out for 4 days once again, but that was when an old name struck back. On October 6th, MJ returned and improved his time to 23.500 seconds. Another decent improvement, but he wasn't done there. He continued to grind that night, and he drove this run. A 23.149 second run, completely destroying my run by nearly half a second. It was an amazing run and blew the pace of improvements up to this point out of the water. It was so strong that nobody would be able to challenge it for nearly 3 months. By this point, the current record was so strong that in order to beat it, you would either need nearly perfect lines or you would have to create a completely new line to make up for the difference. But the community was up to the challenge, and I kicked it off when I discovered that the last turn in lap 1 could be optimized by performing an early boost and a sharper turn. By starting your drift earlier and releasing it just as you get to the turn while simultaneously sharply turning left, it would dramatically shorten the time you spend in this turn because your line would be much more inside and you would gain speed from the boost much earlier on. Using this new method, after nearly 3 months, on the first day of 2025, I was finally able to reclaim the record with a 23.133 second run, a 0.016 second improvement. Once again, it was the smallest possible improvement someone could make, and I knew it was only a matter of time before someone came along and used my own new line against me to take it back. I needed to improve my time before it was too late, and so I started to grind the course in hopes of breaking the 23-second barrier and driving the first 22-second run. In just 5 days, on January 6th, a 22-second run was finally driven, but it wasn't driven by me. Jag0 had swooped in and stolen the first 22-second run, but he didn't just beat me to the barrier, he completely changed the way the track was played. Not only did he utilize my new line, he also discovered that you gain slightly less speed when releasing a boost on the on-ramp as you would when releasing a boost when your car is on flat ground. With this in mind, he chose to switch out the on-ramp blue boost for a yellow boost before the ramp starts. This would ordinarily be slower, however, because of a few tricks, he was able to get a faster line with it. The yellow boost being released on flat ground was the first piece to the puzzle, but when you add in that this line requires you to straighten out the car at the top of the ramp for just a moment, it leads to a more direct line. Plus, if you factor in the fact that yellow boosts take less time to charge than blue boosts, you see he's able to release his last boost before the straightaway sooner and blitz ahead of all of the other racers who were still charging their boosts. But that wasn't all. He had revived the technique of driving through the fence at the start of lap 1. With all these methods combined, he was able to break through the 22-second barrier for the first time. A 22.983 second run. A 0.150 second improvement. But he wasn't satisfied with just that. In the very same day, he would proceed to drive a 22.750 followed by a 22.733, completely destroying my previous record by 0.4 seconds. A huge improvement by this point in the track that was only possible due to all of the new discoveries he had made. His record was very strong and had the potential to last for a very long time. However, just over a month and a half later, 2 players had individually made the same new discovery at the same time. A discovery that would once again completely change the way the track is driven. The first of the 2 that was able to work this new technique into a world record was the other titan of PGRC, a player named Frapp. By this point, although we started playing later than Jag0, Frapp had managed to take the majority of world records and he would constantly trade times back and forth with Jag0 on all of the maps. The new technique he discovered was to slow down at the start of lap 2, just enough to manage to drift down the ramp without your car lifting off the ground and crashing out. This line was theorized by some players like Jag0, but it was never confirmed to be faster until now. It allowed for a much more direct line through the S-turn and cut out the airtime in the jump down the ramp, allowing you to start drifting inwards much sooner. Frapp had also discovered around this time that your top speed is not only determined by if your drift sparks are yellow or blue, but also by the speed of your car when you release a drift. Not only does this explain why it is faster to release a drift before the first on-ramp, as your speed is slightly faster when your car is on flat ground, it also explains why it is slightly faster to straighten out your car as you release your drift after the on-ramp, because your speed is slightly faster when it is drifting wide rather than tight. With this new discovery in mind, Frapp was able to make the most of his drifts and keep a more consistently high top speed after each drift. Using that, on top of the new line down the starting ramp, although he chose to drive around the barrier instead of through it at the start of the map, on February 25th, Frapp was able to drive a 22.649 second run. It was a 0.083 second improvement, but these new methods were sure to increase the pace on the track even further in the near future. That said, the other player that had discovered the same method and was grinding the same trick was me. and I decided to include the line through the fence. It made the lap 2 S-turn much less consistent, but on February 26th, I managed to drive a 22.533 second run, a 0.116 second improvement, but I knew it was only a matter of time before Jag Zero came back to copy my techniques and use them against me all over again. So after a short break, I was back on the grind. By this point, I had discovered that if you release your drift boost at the top of the on-ramp in lap 1, just as your car is about to hit the ground, it would cause the car to bounce and somehow gain some time. By using this as a way to get consistently better starts than both Jag Zero and Frap, just 3 days after I got the world record, on March 1st, I managed to get this run. A 22.333 second run, a 0.2 second improvement, and at this point in the track, that is a huge margin. I was very satisfied with this time and thought it was about as fast as the track could possibly get, but my perspective would change the very next day. On March 2nd, Jag Zero used the new techniques Frap and I had found and drove a 22.399 second run. It wasn't a new world record, but it was only 0.066 seconds behind me. That in itself wasn't too concerning. The real problem was that at the end of lap 1, I was roughly 0.116 seconds ahead of Jag Zero, meaning that he was able to save around 0.050 seconds in the second lap alone. I knew that if someone took the time to grind the track, my time wouldn't be able to survive. It still wasn't perfect, but neither me, Jag Zero, nor Frap was willing to grind for an improvement when it was already so difficult to improve by the tiniest margin. So the record remained as a 22.333. Until now. Nearly 2 months later, on April 29th, I returned to the Learning Garage. A new player named Toph had joined the Wallaber Discord and was enjoying grinding the Learning Garage light track. Naturally, I was helping him out and giving him advice, but seeing him playing on the track brought back my addiction. I had to keep improving my time. But this time, I wanted to set a time I truly didn't think would be beaten for a long time. A run as close to perfect as I could get. So I got back on the grind. As I was grinding the track and talking with Toph in Discord, I had stumbled upon the realization that at the start of the final turn, if you go a bit wide and tap brake for just long enough, you would get a great line into the finish. This was a huge discovery for me, as that portion of the track was always one of the most confusing to me, just behind the lap 2 S-turn. But that wasn't all. At the same time, Toph had made a throwaway statement when I posted a run for him to watch. He said that he didn't realize you had to brake during the first turn on the second lap S-turn. He said, and I quote, "I was just raw dogging it." But by saying that simple phrase, he had inadvertently opened my eyes to something amazing. Because of the speed that you have when entering that section of the map, combined with the fact that everyone has been driving the lap 2 S-turn the same way for so long, the idea of not braking on the first drift never crossed anyone's mind. Or so I thought. But it turned out that several of the other top players, including Jag Zero and Frap, had opted to not brake at all in the first drift, and I was completely in the dark. So I tried the new technique, and the very next day, on April 30th, I drove a 22.266 second run, a 0.066 improvement. There was just one glaring problem with my new run. Going into lap 2, I was 0.116 seconds behind my PB. There was at least a tenth of a second that I could still save before I had a truly perfect run. And not long after that, I had a run that was 0.05 seconds ahead of my current record at the start of lap 2, which progressed to a 0.233 second lead going into the last turn. And then, I crashed. If I were to combine my best segments from all of my runs, I came to the realization that it would add up to a 21.966. A 21 second run must be possible. But this time, I won't let Jag Zero break another barrier just before I can reach it. So I've decided to grind this track until I get the perfect run. A run that truly won't be beaten for a very long time. A 21 second run.
never challenge. Lies ahead, can't stop to hear what you just said. I'm faster than the sound, get out my way. When obstacles appear,
I'd like to give a special shout out to Frat, Jag0, and MJ, who all helped me set the timeline and provided some videos of their world records. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Wallaber, the sole developer of the game, as well as everyone who has played the track and contributed to its history. This video wouldn't be possible without them. It's always fun to see new faces in the community like Toph, so if you thought the game seemed interesting, I highly encourage you to check it out. I'll be leaving the link to the game's Steam page and a link to the Wallaber Discord in the description. All of the music from this video is from the PGRC soundtrack, and it will also be linked in the description. I appreciate you making it this far. If you feel like interacting with the video, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a comment, or just leave a like. I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope you had as much fun watching it as I did making it. I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye bye!
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey Zog, it's your buddy, Valley. Just wanted to say me and the guys are heading out later this week. Gonna go grab some drinks and play some games and stuff, and you're welcome to come by. I know you've been super busy going for that 21 on Learning Garage, and we're all rooting for you, man. But we're also, I was talking to them the other day, and they said they hadn't seen you. I just looked at Steam, and it says you have 30 hours in the game in the last 2 weeks. I mean, there's a point, where it becomes an obsession. So, if you need anything, just let us know. But, you're always welcome to come by, and we miss you. Okay, good luck. See you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.